Okay, cool.
do it on the
Hey,
server.
what's
Just
up, guys?
on the
My name is Felipe Fernandez, and I will do a talk on algorithm interviews in an interview setting. So this is more for like beginners, and this will prepare you for coding in an interview setting, because whenever you start coding and you go into an interview, like a lot of people get nervous and they don't have a plan, they don't know where to start. I know because I was in that situation. So from my experience, I will like portray what I learned and give all that information to you guys. So do we have any new people here today? Or is it just the usual crew? Oh, is there a new? Yeah? Okay. All right, can you let us know what
My name is Luca.
Cool.
I came for the wrong meeting,
It's
but
not
I'm
my
staying.
time.
Yeah. I'm from Italy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hey, welcome. So, I mean, we're glad you're here.
Yeah, thank
we
you
have
very
pizza,
much.
so feel free to eat some. Cool. All right, so let's get started. So, as I said before, this is a beginner's guide to approaching algorithm problems in an interview setting. We will learn about the IOCE principle and how to pseudocode to organize your thoughts during an interview. So in an interview setting, there's two parts that will help you succeed in that coding interview. So that's the IOCE principle and learning how to pseudocode properly. So we're gonna go through a couple of examples, and we're gonna code using JavaScript, but the logic could be applied to any coding language. So my question is, how would you approach this problem in an interview setting? So let's say this is the problem. Say you're like in an interview and then you're sitting on a computer and the interviewer is sitting in a seat next to you, and he or she asks you, write a function to check if an integer exists in an array. So what would you do?
What language?
You already said
Well, no, because
Yeah, good question. No, this is a good question.
because in most traditional languages, you've got to loop through the array. But if you're in Python, you say if exists in integer number and it returns true, then you got your answer.
That's actually a very good question.
Yeah,
So
but-
let's say the interviewer says any language, the language of your choice.
Then I use Python because it's a built-in function.
Oh.
It wouldn't really matter because it would still use the same runtime complexity. If it's going to be linear, it's going to keep searching until it finds it or it doesn't find it.
Unless it's sorted.
Oh, yeah, sorted.
Oh, these are all like very good comments and questions.
Yeah, they are. Very good.
Cool. Yeah, they're very good. But let's say you're like, okay, let's say you have your computer, right? And like Scott, right? I say, this is the problem. Your first question would be,
If
what
you have
language
to
can I
code
write
your
in?
own-
Can I write in Python? Or did you
If
say
you have to
Python?
code your own solution, the best way to do it is to go use a for loop going through the array.
Okay, so you'll start typing out a for loop, and then you would solve the coding problem, right?
Yes.
Okay,
That's the
cool.
simplest way to do it in the most generic way possible.
Okay, cool.
Wait, are you hard coding this, or I mean, doesn't JavaScript have keywords to check? Isn't there like a number dot is integer function or something like that?
Cool. There may be, yes. Cool, that's a good question. That's a good comment. So any other approaches? So I'm looking more like a general approach on how to solve a problem. More like a problem-solving skills.
So you compare the integer to each element of the array, and if you hit a match before the end of the array, you exit, return true.
Okay. It looks like you're familiar with this problem, but let's say it's a problem that's more complicated. How would you approach it?
I think it means like your thought process, like
break down to steps.
like it needs to take in a number and be compared with something. So
Yeah.
I think you're asking like, would we write it out in a diagram? And follow
Would you ask them if they have like any test cases or something like?
Okay,
and
these are all
then-
very good comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some stuff that's like very good to hear, and then I like you guys' thinking processes. It's very good. All right, cool. Any other comments or questions? Cool. So we'll continue, and I'm going to explain what not to do. So do not start coding immediately, which is very good. A lot of you guys ask questions before you started coding immediately. So even if it's a simple problem, there's like little things hidden within within the problem that you might not catch. So you would not want to start coding immediately because there's a chance that you might miss those like points
It's like
within the problem.
60% comments.
So do not start without having a plan. This last question I asked was very simple, so most of you had an idea of how to approach it. But if it was a larger, more complex problem, then you would have had to plan it out so that you won't like type out, start coding, and then go, wait, whoops, I didn't understand it. Have to erase your code, and then like recode it, and then you come up with a wrong output, and then you have to dig through your code, wondering what happened, what went wrong. So, and then do not start without fully understanding a problem. So there was a case that a friend told me where he read the problem, he started coding. It was something with like add all the integers within the array. So then he started going, I got this. And then at the end, he got the output. And then the interviewer's like, wait, did you read the problem carefully? And it wasn't to add all the integers. It was to subtract all the integers. So he's like, oh my gosh. So he had to redo his problem. And luckily he had enough time to finish, but it just made him look bad.
Oh wait, so the interviewer's gonna tell you that, or
Tell you what?
like the interviewer actually was like, oh, you got this wrong, you sure?
Yeah.
I just
They would
thought-
tell you like you would finish it and then like, oh, I'm done, and then the interviewer was like, oh, just read. Like they comment back. Like you could ask them questions. They're usually pretty cool.
Alright.
Yeah. So this is what to do. Oh, before I go on, any questions about what not to do? Nope. Okay. So now I'm gonna say what
I had
to
a
do.
question actually.
Oh yeah, of course.
So what would you do if you don't really understand the problem, like even after trying to understand it?
Oh, in that case, you would ask your interviewer to elaborate on the problem. Like elaborate, like what do you mean by this? Because in some, like well, for me, I had a question about doing something with Go, a Go board, and I was like, I never played Go. What is that? And then the interviewer explained it to me, like how Go works, how the pieces moves. Like, okay, I kind of got it. So yeah. Oh, okay.
Does that work against you if you're asking all these questions to the interviewer, like to elaborate and all that?
It depends on the questions. If they're programming questions, I mean, it'll probably go a little bit against you because it shows that you do not have the like appropriate skill for the interview. But if it's questions like how to like vocabulary, like for me it was like the Go game. Like if you're a programmer and you've never played Go, that's a normal thing. Even like chess, right? I've never played chess. That's normal. As long as you know how to code, as long as you know how to like solve problems. Yeah. So good question. Cool. So this is more of what you should do. So you should ask interviewer questions to fully understand the problem. It shows that you're critically thinking and that you're trying to see the bigger picture, right? And you should explain what you're doing while you're coding. So by that I mean when you're coding, talk about what you're doing. Talk about your thinking process. Talk about how you're getting to the solution. Talk about like if you're driving to Vegas, right? Talk about how to get there, like what you're doing to get there. So this helps the interviewer understand your thinking process. Like they could see how you're thinking because let's say I'm coding, it's a problem, and I'm coding, and I'm just coding. So what's the interviewer doing? The interviewer is just sitting there watching you code, and then they have no idea what you're thinking. They have no idea what you're doing. They have no idea of how you're getting to the point to where you should be. So, and then feel free to type out notes or plan before you code. So I give the example of the skyscraper, right? So when you're building a skyscraper, how do you build a skyscraper? Like, does anyone know? How would you build a skyscraper?
Start with the plan.
Start with the plan. There you go. Right? Like, how would you plan out building a skyscraper?
First, you have to figure out what it does.
Okay. What else? Costs.
The height.
Height. Equipment.
Who's gonna build it?
Who's gonna build it? Tools you need. Materials you need. Right? Okay. So now let me ask you, how do you build a doghouse?
Same way.
Same way, right? But it's much easier, right? Because you already have an idea of how to build a doghouse, right? It's just like walls and a roof, right? So it doesn't take as much planning, right? You could compare this to a simple algorithm problem, right? So when we talked about the other algorithm problem, the first one, that was fairly simple, right? So a lot of you guys started coding because you have experience coding something similar, right? So that's similar to building a doghouse, but when you're building a skyscraper, so some of those algorithm questions you get in an interview are a bit more complex. So you could think of those as skyscrapers. Whereas like the practice problem that we did is more of a doghouse, right? Cool. Any questions about that, approaches to problem solving? Cool. So I'm gonna talk about IOCE, and that's short, or it's not short, it's an acronym for input, output, constraints, and edge cases and examples. So it's a plan before you code. So before you start interview question, a coding problem, this is the plan to code it. So it helps the interview see your thinking process. So I will go back to the problem that we did. Okay, so here we have a problem, right? Can you guys see that? Or didn't you make it bigger?
Can you zoom in, please?
Yeah, can you see that now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
If I could interject quickly, edge
Yeah.
case, what does that mean again?
Cool, good question. So I'll get there in a bit. Cool, but if I don't answer your question, let me know. All right. So what we're going to talk about is IOCE. So what does the I stand for again? Inputs. What does the O stand for? Outputs. What does the C stand for?
Constraints.
Constraints. And the E?
Examples.
Edge cases and examples. Cool. So
Don't you also need to know the, like you'll need the data set, what would that be under?
so a data set would
The array, basically.
The array. So that would be an input. Yeah. So that's a good question. Okay, so the question is write a function to check if an integer exists in an array, right? So in this case, what would be our input?
The data set of the array and the integer you need to compare.
Cool. So it's going to be an array and the integer, right? Cool. So we know our input. So we could skim this over again, see if we're missing anything. So it doesn't look like we're missing anything, right? Cool. So what would our output be?
True, false, or no?
Cool.
Or actually, no, just true, false.
Just true or false, yeah.
True, false. Cool. So constraints. So in a lot of interviews, you're not gonna be giving constraints. So by constraints, I mean typically, I'll use this as an example. A constraint would be solve in linear time. So it's usually a time complexity or space complexity related
I've
like thing.
seen that before, linear time. What does that mean?
So we had a talk on time complexity and space complexity. So in linear time means what's the best way to say this? So as
it scales, it,
the time to
the time and the size increase parallel.
Yeah.
So it's like a graph that keeps going this way.
Yeah. So like one for loop, a for loop. If you have to solve an algorithm with a for loop,
One for
That's-
loop is okay in linear
yeah,
time.
it is linear time.
Whereas if you have a nested for loop inside of a for loop, then that's logarithmic time.
That'll be what's it called? A quadratic time, n squared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a log function. It doesn't scale it scales more steeply the more you have in it.
Yeah.
The logs are the ones that they, as they go, or they take less time.
Or geometric, I guess some people call it.
Yeah. So for this talk, I'm not gonna talk too much about constraints, but if you get it in the interview setting, like don't bring it up. Don't do IOC and then do and then ask the interviewer, is there any constraints? Because they'll give it to you. So don't ask for like what the constraints are. So if they don't give it to you, then like don't mention it. So yeah, avoid
Unless
constraints.
there's 1,000 interviewees and you need to stand out.
Yeah.
Well, they could ask you a harder question.
They could
later
ask
on.
you a hard question. Yes, they always could. They like adding like questions on top of questions if you solve it too quickly. So what was that? Oh yeah, so I had an interview once where like I solved a problem and like I didn't ask about constraints, and at the end they asked me, okay, so the problem that you solved, what's the time complexity of it? So just be aware that they might ask you after you solve the problem. So in my case, it was a linear time complexity, and they're like, oh, okay, good. So just know that it's there. All right, cool. So now we get to edge cases and examples, right? So this is where you come up with an input and see what the result would be. So in this case, write a function to check if an integer exists in an array. So we would have, let's say we have 1 as an input, and our array is 0, 2. What would this give me? False, right? Cool. Any questions about that? Cool. So what if we have 3 and 3 and 1? What would this give me? True. Cool. What if we have 4 and an empty array?
False.
Would this be false? Cool. Any questions about that? Okay. What if we have, let's say, the letter A in an empty array?
And you'd have to convert the character to the ASCII value to see, well, it'd be false because it's an empty array.
It falls outside of the
Also, it's not an
parameters.
integer.
No,
Cool.
a character has an integer value.
Cool. So in this case, this is where you ask your interviewer question. Am I gonna expect only integers as an input, or am I gonna be expecting characters? Because like you said, this falls out of the scope of the parameters. So this is where your interviewer goes, oh, okay, just don't check. They usually say it's gonna be integers. They try to make it simple for you. In other cases, they would state to validate your inputs before executing your program. So if they tell you to validate, you would just make a note validate. Or this is how I approach it. I'll just type in validate, right? Or something like write. It's a note for myself, right? A validate function. Cool. So in this case, let's make it simple. Let's only expect integer values. And we're always expecting an array. So like, let's say this. What would this give me?
True.
Cool. Okay. Last one. What if I get this?
Should still be true.
True. All right. Any questions on any of these? Cool. So do we fully understand the problem? Do we understand the inputs, the outputs, and like all the edge cases? So like for edge cases, we came across this edge case where there's a string input.
It's a good question.
And
It's a good question.
it had a
Yeah, it was
valid.
just a little.
No, I'll get to you. And we had to we had to ask the interview if we had to validate the inputs. So that's an edge case. There'll be more complex edge cases later on, but you could think of that as an edge case.
I was kind of hoping for a definition.
Oh, like a definition. A definition for an edge case, I would say, is that that would a case where it would
Break your code.
might break your code. Yeah, break your code or might break your code. Oh, go ahead.
Question
Joaquin.
in that case.
Yeah.
I have a question. I mean, I don't know if it's still new to this, so.
No,
I
no
don't
problem.
sound too stupid, but.
No.
It was just, cause on number 16 there, like, if it was just the blank array, would it be true? Cause it's not undefined, it's not NaN, it's not null, it's just a blank array.
So because the number 4 isn't in the array, so the value is not in the array, so it would be false. So an edge case, another edge case could be, what if the array is null? Do we output false, or will we output like the array is like a string? The array is empty. Like
Well, it's perfect because I would say that that falls outside of the scope of the problem, right?
Yeah.
Because-
That'd
So
be-
would an edge case be outside of the scope?
It depends.
I guess it's on the edge, right? That's
Like
the
it'll
one.
be like, it's like one of those. It could fall out of the scope, or it could still be in the scope. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say that would be an edge case because it would break your code. So you'd have to write something where if the length of the array is less than 1, you would just get out of the thing and return false. Or else if it keeps going through the thing, it would break your code because it'll try to go through a for loop of array that doesn't have a length.
So you could think, let's say positive integers, right? Let me change this to positive integers, right? So what if I have this negative input? Right? What if I have a negative input?
Then that's
You tell
breaking.
me.
I mean, this is where you ask the interview, okay, what happens if I have negative input? What do I do? And then you could ask the interviewer, instead of asking the interviewer, sometimes it's better to tell the interviewer, like, can I output no if I have a negative number? And they'll be like, yeah, yeah. So if you tell the interviewer what you want to do, I think that's more like assertive and like makes you stand out compared to other people who are interviewing. So change this back. Okay, cool. So that's edge cases and examples. So we did our IOCE and we fully understand the problem. So then the next step is to pseudocode. So who's familiar with pseudocoding? Yeah, cool. So everyone has their own style of pseudocode. So I have my own style. So now that we fully understand the problem with pseudocode, so then how I would do it is I would write, I'm gonna have a function, and what would the name of the function be? Give me a name for this function. Function. A different name. I can't use
Existent.
functions are cute, but
My function.
my function. All right.
No,
so
that's terrible.
That won't. The interviewer
like
won't be
standard in every
impressed with
textbook in the
a function
world.
called my function.
Integer check.
So you're trying to impress the interviewer, right? So
Put like some enterprise keywords in there.
put some like
Integer test,
integer test, right? Integer
or just int test should
Int
work
test.
too.
V1.
int test, right?
I like what
Cool.
doesn't describe it.
So then, help me out here because I don't know how to solve this problem. What would my first step be?
You have to have an input into the function.
Cool. So, what do you want to call this input? Just input,
Integer input and array input,
array input.
because you're gonna have to have two inputs.
Wait, are we pseudocoding or are we actually
Yeah,
not coding?
this is pseudocode. Just because with pseudocode, I try not to write a lot because it kind of takes up too much time in the interview setting.
In in
as long as
JavaScript, this is coding.
So as long as my pseudocoding is clear to me and to the interviewer, then, or as long, yeah, whatever I have to do so it's clear to me and to the interviewer, then I mean, and as long as it doesn't take up too much time, then that's my approach. Like right here, you could understand this. Like this is a function, boom, and these are my inputs. All right, cool. All right, so what would the next step be? So then I have to write a function to check if an integer exists in an array. So I have to check if it exists in an array. So what am I most likely going to be doing?
You're gonna compare, you're gonna loop through you're gonna go through the array to see if the integer's there.
So I'm gonna loop through the array.
Sometimes it's harder to actually pseudocode than to just
Mhm.
write a
It takes
loop,
practice.
because you're trying to think of a way to say what you're doing without using the terminology of the language you're doing it in. Because if you're going to do that, then you're coding, you're not just pseudocoding.
Yeah, that's true. So,
So-
but like you said, you're gonna loop
So
through the
loop
array.
through array, comparing each value to integer, input integer.
Alright, input, and then, did you have a question?
I just had something.
Okay.
So, there's two schools of thought
Yeah.
for pseudocode. There's one where they prefer to make it as close but loosely related to the code they're going to be coding in. But then there's the other one where it's more of a shopping list, right? They have items based on logic, right? You're going to
Yeah.
follow them and translate them into code. But again, the previous is where it's not code,
Yeah.
but it's using keywords like if or else or whatever they're using in that specific language.
Yeah.
Personally, I kind of do the shopping list within my code, right?
Yeah.
So I comment out my things, multi-line codes. Comment, and then I attack it little by little.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
When I was taking my C++ classes at RCC, the professor said that the pseudocode should be able to be used as the comments of your code. If you're correctly commenting your code, then all you have to do is take out the comments, and that can be considered as pseudocode.
So it probably subscribes to the shopping list.
So basically it says what everything does step by step. It's just what he said.
No.
Yeah.
It makes
Yeah,
total sense.
makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's wonderful.
What can you
Well,
add
and
to
a lot of us would actually just do the pseudocode after we wrote the programs
Oh,
and
yeah.
get rid of the code and just take the comments, and there's our pseudocode.
Oh.
No, I just had a question. I don't know if I missed it, but is the array already provided?
So yes, so see that's where I failed in my pseudocode because I didn't make it fully clear. So the array is provided. So write a function to check if an integer exists in an array. So that's a good question for an interview. Is an integer and an array gonna be the arguments for a function? So they're most likely gonna say yes. Like you're not gonna like create your own array, right? Probably not. Cool, so that's a good question. So we were at here. You said to loop through the array input, right? And then what? We're gonna what? Check
Compare
each, compare
integer to array element.
Compare
Integer value to array element.
array elements, right? Cool. So compare, and if it's true, break.
If it's true, exit and return true.
So what I like doing here, just if just because in an interview setting you don't have a lot of time. This is almost like coding. So notice that I don't put all like the stuff that I already know. Like in a for loop, every for loop has I++. It's kind of implied if you've done this long enough. So I'm expecting the interviewer to have done it long enough. But like looking through this, you could kind of understand the logic of what I'm trying to do. So like right here, I'm looping using a for loop, starting at I = 0, and as long, see this is not clear, as long as I is less than the array the length, the array input, the length of the array input, right? So if the integer input equals the value in the array, then return true, else return false. So then, if I was in an interview, I would ask the interviewer, is this logic sound? Does this logic make sense? I would ask the interviewer this. And they would look at it, it's like, okay. And there was a time where I actually asked this And then I asked them, do I proceed with coding? And they said no. I'm like, we'll give you the next question. I'm like, all right, cool. Because sometimes, like, if you show that you know it, you don't have to code it. The interviewer is gonna go, yo, you know this. Let's just go on to the next question. So that saves you time. All right, so let's actually code this because we don't know if it works. In theory, it works, right? But yes.
You can actually like tell the interviewee this sounds like logical to them.
I did, and they're like, yeah. And then like, do I proceed with coding? And then they were like, nah, it's cool. Next problem. So you could ask the interviewer that because I mean I did,
Right.
and it turned out okay with me.
Is it a common thing in programming interviews to do that?
I went through like an interview seminar, and they said it was okay. So I did it, and it was okay with me. Like they didn't say like, what are you doing?
No, like I'm tripping out because like I mean I don't come from that background, you know. And I was
Yeah.
like at one point thinking of going to law school, and I was listening to the else like you can do any of that. You have to go in knowing the answers. So you couldn't ask these questions. To me, it's just tripping out.
Oh, it's because you want to show that you're not just thinking about the problem. You're thinking about like a big picture, right? Like because in the real world scenario, what if like inputs are not always integers, right? So that's why you ask, oh, is it always going to be an integer? Like, yes, or yes, right? But sometimes you're not going to get like perfect inputs for your function. So that's as long as you keep that in mind, like oh, this person knows that they might have to validate inputs, then it shows like the interviewer that you're like you're thinking about the bigger picture, that you're one step ahead. Cool. So actually, let's experiment. I'm gonna write this in JavaScript, or you guys will help me write it in JavaScript. And does anyone else know a programming language, like besides JavaScript, you know, like Python? We'll do it in Python too, and see if the logic is sound. Is that cool?
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Everyone's so excited.
I know.
We can
All right,
pass it
cool.
out to-
So how would I write this in JavaScript? Like we have the pseudocode here, right? So-
Uncommented?
Hmm?
Just uncommented.
Okay, no, I don't have everything. I don't have my braces. I don't have my like little things in there. So a bit of syntax in there. So how would I start?
Const int test equals.
Oh, so you're using ES6.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So int.
Equals. And then enter your inputs right there.
Cool. Next.
Then for, or actually, just do our input.map. Oh no, you can't break. Or can you?
Try using the for loop for this case.
Over here.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm just trying to follow because I don't know
I
the
equals
syntax for JavaScript.
Don't worry, we'll do it in Python a little bit.
I less than our
I
input.length.
scrambled my brain. You know?
It's similar, but not
Then
the same.
I plus plus. If integer input equal our input I, return true.
And then what?
And then outside of the for loop scope, put return false.
Okay. So, oops, what am I doing? So, I can check this by console log int tests, and what do you want for input?
74.
74. And for my array, let's do 1, 4, 74, 0. And what are we expecting the answer to be?
True.
Works. True. Cool.
Just 74 is in the
And then if we don't have a valid, well, we have 7 as the input, what do we get?
false.
False. Cool. It works. Let me see if I can find a Python thing.
I'm still using 3.6. They don't have 3.8% OS yet. And that's what I do most of my development. They only have 3.7% OS yet.
So I took an interview once, and it was in Python, and I was like shaky on Python, but because I knew the logic, like I just wrote pseudocode down, like they said like good job, like oh cool.
The logic is very similar, although that's not the comment in Python.
So what's the comment in Python?
Hashes.
Hashes, yeah, that's right.
Triple quotes.
No, over each line, or you need to use a triple quote before and after.
Triple quote.
Although triple quote's not really a comment, it's just means it's a multi-line string.
Okay, can I leave it like this or?
It should work if you leave it like that.
Okay.
The
So how would
better
I-
way is to put a hash in front of each line, but that should work and not cause a function, because you're basically just defining a really long string
Okay.
with no variable.
Okay. So then, how would I do this in Python? I think it's like something like this, right?
Def function name, so integer test, and then your input is going to be integer and list. Integer and list,
Oh, let's do I guess list input just to
or array list would be fine, yeah.
array.
Or
Yeah.
and then a colon.
Cool. So I'm doing. How would you do loops in Python?
You do for.
I like looping
So you're
Python.
actually looping through. It's not actually an array. It's an actual. It's more. It's got more similarities to a linked list.
Okay.
So you actually don't go item by item. You have to go through each element of the object. So you're going to do for element or item in.
Do I need parentheses?
No, for item in list name, so array list, colon, and then indent again. If integer input equals
Is this
double equal
Okay.
element or item,
Oh yeah.
because item is that specific element in the array. Return true. Enter, and then go back to there and return false.
Cool. And then
And that should be it.
to call the function, what's the console? log for
You
Python?
just type the function name.
Oh.
You can just call it. It'll.
Well, but you're not outputting anything, so
Is it-
just do print int test. Actually, I don't think that'll work.
Okay.
Yeah, it should.
Can I save it to a variable and then print out the variable?
Yeah, I was gonna say do I equals function name and then print I.
Okay. I equals int test, and then was it 74? It's the 74 and 1, 3, 74. Oh wait, that's not calling.
No semicolon, and then
And I.
print I. Yeah,
Run
that
this.
should work.
No.
No.
This is
Oh, it's a capital T and a capital F.
Oh, yeah.
which one?
For false and true, they have to be capital.
Oh.
Good call. I wouldn't copy that. I haven't
Cool.
used Booleans in
True.
a while, so.
Nice. So I'm gonna try with just
This would be a good way to, or exercise to show refactoring.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's actually another way you can do it too. You could do if, you could do it with just a single if statement as well. If you do if integer input in our
Oh, yeah.
list, return true, else false.
For now, let's keep it basic. I just want to show that the logic, whether it's JavaScript or Python, as long as your logic is sound, it's valid for any language.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. So this allows you to apply for interviews that say, oh, can you code in Python? You go, yeah, I know how to code in Python. You just have to do a couple Google searches, and then now you could, I know Python, but then I could code in JavaScript. I could do an algorithm in JavaScript, and then yeah, cool. So how much time do I have? Let's do one more problem. So, okay, so which problem do you guys want? So we did this one, so this one's gone.
Do you know FizzBuzz?
FizzBuzz. I know different versions of FizzBuzz. One's like you have to output the results in an array. Others you have to console log each result.
Because I know that was a really common one.
Yeah, let's do
I used it
FizzBuzz.
At USC and they used it.
Okay,
Fizz
so
buzz?
Yeah. Logic Buzz, it's a really good one.
so FizzBuzz. What's FizzBuzz? You want?
Oh no, I just guided you. Like,
So what's FizzBuzz?
I heard it before.
There's a lot of
So-
different names for algorithms, but they're the same thing.
I've never heard of it,
FizzBuzz.
so.
I don't. What's FizzBuzz?
So essentially, you have a loop, right? They want you to iterate from 0 to 100, and all the even numbers are say fizz. All the odd numbers.
Oh, actually, this
are,
is a perfect example because
Okay.
no, sorry to interrupt, but a lot of cases they won't write it out for you. They won't copy and paste it for you. They'll tell it to you. So as they're talking,
Yeah.
type out some notes.
You give him a real algorithm and he has to hard code it right now live.
Yeah. Oh, give me that one.
That'd be a good example.
Well,
Yeah.
Brian's coming up.
Okay, can you repeat that, please,
So,
Mr.
yeah,
Interviewer?
So perfect.
Okay.
So I'm the interviewer.
Okay, and interviewee.
So Felipe.
Yes, sir.
I want you to iterate from let's start from 1 to 100. Okay? And for every even number, I want you to print out fizz. For every odd number, I want you to print buzz. However, if the number is divisible by both 3 and 5, I want you to print out fizz buzz.
Okay, cool.
Please write a function for that.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So am I expecting, it's just from 1 to 100, right?
Yes.
Does that
For
include
n.
1 and 100?
Yes.
Okay,
1 and 100.
cool.
Inclusive.
So then I will, so my inputs, am I gonna have any input or is it just a function?
Nope.
Okay. Outputs, it's just console.logs, right?
Yes.
This is basic loops.
What's the logic?
I'm just gonna make a note for you guys to see. Just don't say this. But know that it's there. Okay, cool. So if I have a 0, will I have to validate inputs?
Nope.
Nope.
No input.
So, cool. And so if my input, so I'm not gonna have any inputs. So
You
I'll
need
make
to
a note
figure
right
out
here.
which order to do your checking in first.
Can you see that again?
Well, you need to figure out which order to do your checking, because
Oh yeah.
if you do it in the wrong order, then you're gonna get the wrong output.
Oh yeah.
Because
Gonna get to that. So, yeah.
You're nervous, go ahead.
Okay.
Just make it
So,
so instead of
what's
3
this?
and 5, you do prime numbers.
So I have no inputs. None inputs. I'm gonna have console logs, no constraints. Example. So if there's no inputs, I don't have to worry about inputs. So if there's not much pseudocoding, or not pseudocoding, but planning I have to do, just a basic function. So next, I'm gonna pseudocode. So it's gonna be a function, and I'm gonna call it FizzBuzz. So notice that I'm talking while I'm typing, and I will have to check every value and see if I have to output fizz, buzz, or FizzBuzz. I've done FizzBuzzes before. Do I have to print out the numbers, like 1, 2, just fizz and buzz? So I'm gonna have a list of fizzes and buzzes. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna have to do a loop from 1 to 100. That's inclusive. And if it's divisible by 3 and 5, so I'm gonna need, if I, because I'm gonna use I as my iterator, if I equals 3, or if I equals 5, then
fizz buzz. Else, if I equals 3, it's gonna be what? Fizz. Else, if I triple equals 5, then buzz. So let's make sure this is a valid logic. So if
What was
if I
I?
iterate,
What is I?
I is the iterator. So I type this I right here. So it's a loop, right? So I should make it more clear for the interviewer. So for loop.
So it shouldn't be I equals 3, it should be I mod 3 equals 0 or I mod 5 equals 0.
Yeah, good.
Hey, you want?
Trying to.
I had a question. So if it's like, you see they're kind of going on the wrong track, is this where you would kind of tell them like, oh, I need you to do this? Or like give them hints to the problem?
If I see him going off track,
Like assume that he was just gonna do if it equals 3 or 5, and he wasn't gonna iterate over the 100 and see if it's a odd or even number. Is this where you kind of tell him like, give him hints about the question?
I would probably ask him, can
It's
you
just-
kind of elaborate on what your thought process is? Like, what are you doing here? What are you doing there?
No, it's what you add.
Or where are you going to take this?
Start
Or
at 0,
whatever.
you
If
go
I
up to
see him
100,
struggling,
and I is the
I'd probably just say, thank you for your time. I mean, if I like the interviewee, I'd probably say, have you thought about this? Right? It just really depends. There's a lot of things that go on in an interview, you know? Maybe this is the last question in the interview and it's been 2 hours long, right? Maybe he's just fried, I don't know. It depends.
Cool. So you noticed something, right? I was gonna say that, but
Oh, sorry.
no. Cool. So notice that I continue the problem without understanding the problem, right? So what does it say? I iterate from 1 to 100. Am I doing that? Yes, 1 to 100, inclusive. For every even do fizz. Am I doing for every even fizz? No, right? So what do I have to do? I would have to do, let's see how to do it. Oh,
Actually,
go ahead.
the you would need more clarification from the interviewer, because it didn't say not to output, it didn't say to output only one. You might have to output fizz and fizz buzz.
Good question.
So
Yeah.
you have to get more clarification from the interviewer.
Yes. Good.
Are you supposed to only have one output, or are you supposed to output fizz and fizz buzz, or?
Next time, take Scott with you to the interview.
He'll ask all the questions.
He will ask you all the good questions.
Cool. So when you're pseudocoding, you're gonna come up with questions like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Like what was just said. So then you'll be like, hey, I don't understand. Do you want me to output both fizz and buzz, or fizz buzz, or yeah? So because you see it here, right? For every odd, output buzz, right? And then if it's divisible by 3 and 5, I print fizz buzz. So is it that, like, in this case, I would ask the interviewer, okay, so if it's divisible by 3, do you want me to output fizz buzz, or fizz buzz buzz, or buzz fizz buzz?
If it's divisible by both, fizz buzz.
Can I interject? Is this a trick question?
What do you mean?
Because I just found a wacky way of interpreting it.
Yeah.
It is a trick question.
No, it's not. Keep
Okay,
asking your
for every
question.
even fizz, okay, so I output 50 fizzes,
Uh-huh.
and then I output 50 buzzes,
Uh-huh.
and then I output like 12-ish fizz buzzes.
So the question is the following, right? For every odd, you do one. If every even, you do the other. However, right, if it's divisible by 3 and 5, print fizz buzz,
But do you do?
Nice.
right?
Okay.
So that's all it is. Don't overthink it. That's the
Okay.
problem.
No,
if you
I-
overthink it, you're
I
gonna
was-
lose it.
I was like literally thinking. But
Yeah,
don't-
yeah.
So
Don't
it's like going to
overthink
be
it.
one of the three.
Yeah, that's all it is.
So if the value, okay, interview, like Mr. Interviewer, sir. So 15.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Oh, shoot. So 15, number 15, right? It's divisible by 3 and 5.
Yes.
And it's also odd,
Right.
right? So would I output fizz buzz?
Yes, only fizz
Fizz
buzz
buzz.
as a
Okay.
word together, and then
Cool.
you continue.
So notice I asked for clarification. So if I have a value like 15, so if I have, if I is 15, fizz buzz, and not buzz, right? So I would skip buzz, I would skip fizz, obviously because it's 15, so it would be fizz buzz. So in that scenario, I'll write this note right here. It's like, okay, it's example, if I equals 15, it's fizzbuzz. So then I look at my code, it's like, oh, dude, I messed up. So if it's divisible by 3 and 5, I could assume that it's divisible by 15, just because I know that. So if I is divisible by, or let's make it more clear, if I and 5, I do fizzbuzz, right?
Mm-hmm.
Else, if I is even, I do fizz. And if else I is odd, do buzz.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then I have to remember my JavaScript, and I know JavaScript, if you do something like this.
Mod 2 equals 0.
Yes. And then if it's not even,
Mod 2 equals 1.
yeah. Cool.
You could just say just
So
not equal
then-
0.
Hmm?
You just say just not equal 0. But yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so then I look back at my code. Like previously, if I noticed like an error with the code with this, then like how I said before, I would ask the interviewer like clarification. Okay, if it's even, if it's odd, you know, like sorry, what's your name again?
Alex.
Alex?
Mhm.
Like Alex said. So that was a very good question. So then I'm like looking at this, looking through it, inspect it, see if it meets, if it accomplishes the task. If I equals 3 and 5 fizzbuzz, does that make sense, right? 3 and
No,
5 are
that's
fizzbuzz.
still not gonna be correct,
Cool. Why?
because it's only gonna return, it's, why is it I equals 3 and 5? It has nothing to do with being divisible by 3 and 5.
Cool. Awesome. So then what do I have to type?
You have to do mod 3 equals 0 and mod 5 equals 0.
Cool. Good question. Or good answer.
I already told him 3 times, thank you for your time. He didn't listen. So,
Okay.
Trying to save it.
So a shorthand of doing this is 15. I mod 15.
Actually, I
triple
would
equals
go
0.
through a truth table just to see if that's gonna work
So then-
correctly with the and statement as well.
So then I'm looking, see if it makes sense. And I am mod 15 equals 0. This works. This works. This works. This works. Okay, cool. So then I would ask my interviewer, is this logic valid?
I'll be like, yeah, it's good, it's good.
It's
You don't
good,
have to
it's
code
good.
it. Next question.
So then, most of the times I'll have to type out function. So, function is buzz, and then I do for loop.
I had a question actually.
Yeah, go
It's
ahead.
more of a JavaScript question.
Yeah.
When you put else if, would it, if the first condition is true, would it just skip all the rest, or would it keep going through all of them and then print it out?
So it'll go through each one,
So wouldn't it?
or it won't go through. Once one is valid, it'll skip the other ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
All right. Hey, thank you. Have a good night.
Actually, you don't even need that third else if.
Cool.
You can just use else buzz.
Pretty much.
Cool. Glad you guys caught that. I was waiting for someone to say that. So, if I is less than or less than 100, okay. So I'm typing out according to my pseudocode. If I make any mistakes, let me know.
Great job, Felipe. I noticed you used a 3 equal signs. Can you explain why you did that?
So, thank you, Mr. Interviewer. So, 3 equal signs, or 2 equal signs would check if the 2 values are equal, but in 3 equal signs, not only do they check for value, but they also check for type. So, if the number 1's in a string, and you have double equals to the actual number 1, then you'll get true as the output. But if I have it with triple equal signs, so the string 1, triple equals the number 1, that will be false, because there are different types. One's a string and one's a number, right? So that's why I put triple equal signs.
This is just a JavaScript thing, right?
It's just a JavaScript
It's a
thing.
feature.
So it's what, like freebies?
So, huh? But someone said something? Oh, never mind. So now I'm typing my, so notice that I'm still talking, so my interviewer could understand my thinking process. So then now I'm gonna type my else if I is even, so I mod 2 triple equals 0, then I want a console.log, what was it, fizz. Alright, and then my next one, which is a else, then console.log
In the browser.
was,
It's basically no output.
so I would call my function fizzbuzz, and I'm gonna run it. Okay, cool. So is this, did I code this right? Did I follow my pseudocode?
Is it inclusive of 100?
Good point. It didn't include 100.
No.
So,
Thank you for your
think, so notice that I put, I have to go from 1 to 100, right? So do I go from 1 to 100? Go in my
1
pseudocode.
to 100 inclusive.
Yeah. So do I?
So it needs to be less than or equal.
So what changes do I have to make here?
I equals 1 and I
I
less than 101.
Cool. That's one way.
I is less than or equal to 100.
That's another way. So either one is fine, as long as you pass the interview. Cool.
As long as you pass the interview.
Yes.
Yeah.
So any questions about this entire process, the whole interview process? So there's there's 3 steps, right? So what's the first step? Can someone say it?
Understand the
Input.
problem.
What's this acronym?
Oh,
IOC.
input.
The whole thing.
IOC.
Input.
IOCE, right? And IOCE helps you what? Understand the problem,
To
right?
plan your solution.
Yeah, to plan your solution. All right, what's the next part?
Pseudocode.
Pseudocode, awesome, right? And what's the pseudocode for?
To outline the logic you'll use to find the solution to the problem.
Yes, to plan it out. And the last part is
Code.
code, right? Cool. So those are the 3 takeaways I want you to guys take home, and it'll help you prepare for your interview. Yeah. Cool. All right. Any questions?
I like it.
Cool. All right. So that's it for the talk. If you guys have any questions, question.
I was just wondering, how common is it to they'll ask you to refactor afterwards?
Very common. So if I wrote something like this, they might ask, okay, instead of a for loop, do you use some other approach, right? Oh no, okay. First they'll ask you, okay, so they might ask you, what's the time complexity of this function? And what would you say? It would
Linear.
be linear. Awesome. And in this case, can you refactor it? Yeah, you can, I guess. We kind of did a little bit of refactoring here. Let's say I did an else if, and then I put an else if here. They're like, can you make this code cleaner? And then I'm like, okay, I can remove this. Yeah, or
Actually, technically, you could have else if I mod 2 equals 1, and then for that final else, you can have else error.
yeah, you could do that.
That way, it makes sense to have 2 else ifs and then a final else that's something for unexpected circumstances.
Yeah, they might ask you to validate your code. It's like, oh, can you validate? What if I have?
So is the correct answer switch?
Huh?
Is the correct answer switch?
Switch?
Yeah.
I
Or
think
K-switch, you can throw.
you could throw in for this case.
To refactor, you mean?
Yeah.
No.
I don't think there's a lot of refactoring.
Switch.
I just did a little bit of refactoring.
Switch is wonderful for strings. When you utilize the strings, but for integers.
I think this is pretty good. They might ask you okay, what if I need an input, right? What if I want from, instead of 1 to 100, what if 1 through 80? And I just wanted to put output 80 values,
So you
80
have to-
console logs. So what would I do? And then you go, oh, okay, I would type in val and less than val. Yeah, So little things like that, little changes to your code before moving on to another problem. Cool, good question. Cool.
Run it.
Run it. Let's hope it works. Right. I don't know. Let's make a smaller value. Let's do 8. There you go. So,
Put
yeah.
15, so we know if FizzBuzz works.
Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you want? What value?
15.
Man, you guys just want to break my code. I'm getting recorded here, so.
Put a letter.
A letter? Okay, let's see what happens.
Before you do, can you say hello to Esri? Hello, Esri.
Hey, Esri.
And if it breaks,
Say
I know
no.
it's you.
So, what do I get? I didn't get
Undefined.
anything.
There's no return.
Does not return.
So it fails silently?
So this is a case where like it's weird. This is where a case where I have to do like a validate. Maybe I could write a separate function. Like
So is it crashing at the for loop?
I think so. Yeah, it's less than or equal to a character. I don't know actually.
I don't know how
I don't know if it
JavaScript
interprets.
processes a character.
Yeah, I don't know if it I don't think it interprets it as a. I mean, we could do a console log here.
Yeah.
Like, and then, yeah, it crashes at the for loop.
But
Or
if
it
you
might
get-
not crash, but it might like skip over the for loop and then
Yeah, on the bottom scope, see, put a
Yeah.
console log there, see if it.
You can also check and see what it does if you do the condition. Try to compare an integer to a letter A.
It just skips the for loop.
Yeah.
So it's not a valid input type for the for loop.
Yeah, so just skips it entirely.
Or it checks the condition and it's already met, so it just skips it.
Maybe
Something.
something. It does something.
What's
Yeah.
what's the JavaScript command to
Cool. All right. So, any
ask
final
you value the
questions?
character?
Cool.
To what?
All right.
What's the JavaScript command?
You guys been a
to
great
ask you-
audience. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
What?
Well, because A has an ASCII value.
I forget what to ask you about.
It's like Word in Python.
Yeah, I don't know what the
Oh,
JavaScript
oh.
version is though.
So before you guys start networking like you guys normally do, like super awesome, next week on Wednesday we're gonna have Food Note presenting. They're gonna be providing delicious food for you guys, but make sure you RSVP, follow the link that they provide to choose whatever you want to eat. They give you options in case you're.
So there's no showing without RSVP?
It kind of makes no sense because then you get no food, right? So make sure you RSVP.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Sign up for your food. It's like yes.
Wait,
Make sure you
RSVP on
RSVP.
Meetup or?
I'm sorry.
On Meetup, like usually?
Yes, on Meetup.com.
And that's gonna come out
So on Meetup.com in the description, there's a link right there, and it tells you to follow this link.
There's a feature on meetup.com to RSVP is what you're saying.
Anyways, yeah. So any other questions?
Well, no, but there's also a link in meetup.com
What was the company
to
again?
sign up for the
Food Gnome. So Food Gnome is a company, a startup
Oh, okay.
that's hosted here as well
Because
at
Food
Excite.
Gnome is giving
And then on Saturday we have a MySQL talk as well.
choose which one you want.
So thank
You
you.
have to RSVP for it, otherwise you won't have one because they don't want to waste one.